We'll call to order the November 4th, 2024 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. First item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from October. Has everyone had a chance to review the October minutes? Are there any questions or corrections? Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the October minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are approved. Up next is to review and sign bills. Mr. McGoldberg, do we have any bills?
No bills this evening.
All right. Wish I could say that at home. Next is the staff report, so you're up.
Thank you. So I in the folder, I left some of the photos. I just wanted to draw the committee's attention that we did post up some of the signs, the yard signs that we had purchased in terms of projects. Mr. Esposito did at some of the locations. So we dropped those in there so you can see some of the places that they were placed and how they kind of look on site. In addition to that, for our staff report, I did add in our regular update for the department. I just want to draw attention to a couple of items that we had worked on. Most notably the housing production plan, which has some references to CBC, as well as the CBC, the committee themselves, and the fall special town meeting proposals made the list of priority projects that our department has been working on. We give a little bit of an overview of that in that document. So obviously there's a long list of items and tasks that we've been working on, so that kind of summarizes those. Just wanted to provide that to the committee for their reference in addition to those photos, just to give a flavor of some of the things that our department's been working on, and be happy to speak to any of those, either in the meeting now or offline after. Happy to kind of give more detail, especially as it relates to CPC. But that's it.
There was a question. Is there a sign at Camp 1 again? And or could we possibly get a bigger one since it's hard to see from the road?
Yeah, so these are the temporary signs that we have when we go towards final signage for the site in relation to parking. We can look at including some of that CPA language as part of that formal sign rather than a temporary sign. But
Makes sense. Has anyone seen any of the signs around town?
I saw the one at Dean Park basketball courts.
Excellent.
Yeah. The courts look beautiful, by the way. Very nice.
They really do.
They kind of make the tennis courts look a little shabby.
All I could tell. Are there any questions for Chris about the things that he just shared? Then we'll move on to our action items. To review and vote to issue our written recommendations for our town meeting articles. We have 4 articles that will be before town meeting. Chris, yes, take it away.
So I kind of showcased this memorandum at the previous meeting, but this has been finalized. I think the committee members will be fairly familiar with this. This will go to town meeting members and just formalizes the vote that was taken on each of the articles. We include this kind of introduction section of what CPC is, just to give a little bit of a primer for town meeting members that may not have been aware or were with us from the beginning. So, and then it goes into some of the goals that we have for FY24, and then details the articles. We also include an updated budget, and again, this shows the votes recommended by vote. So this is a document that will go to town meeting members as well as the select board and finance committee for their recommendations as well. So, happy to run through this and any items that the committee would like to review in detail. But I think the important piece to note here, given the budget and the update, the way we've written the motions for town meeting, it will be to draw on both the Historic Resources Reserve account as well as the general undesignated account. We're budgeting about 4,000, projecting that and to be left for this upcoming round of funding. Obviously, that won't cover the projects that we're looking at, so the motion will reference both accounts, and the goal there being to exhaust that account fully, the designated account for Historic Resources Reserve, before tapping into the undesignated funds. So.
This is what will be in the packet, or it goes out
Correct,
to
this
the
would
town
be in the
meeting?
packet, and I've also included, just as supplemental material, which will be included with this, is the memo from town council regarding the anti-aid amendment, just to preface that, and get that information in people's hands, so.
Jason?
So in the motion, it's going to actually break down the dollar amounts from each of the accounts?
No, so we'll not break down the dollar amounts because, so each of these 4 items will be for the Historic Resources Reserve. They'll all be written as drawing the full amount from the Historic Resources Reserve and the undesignated reserve, actually, so you can see. So from 25,000 from the Historic Resources Reserve and undesignated reserve for the project, and what that'll allow us to do, and I can go through the budget, how we kind of reflect that, is that allows us to, whoever writes the check first, we expend it. It's an accounting kind of factor of, exhausting that account down to the cent, and then drawing the remainder from the undesignated reserves, so.
Sorry to be picky about it, but that's not as, that's certainly written there. I'm wondering if the motion specifies preference for Historic Resources Reserve first, followed by undesignated afterwards.
Yes, so we're.
They may have said this too.
Yeah, so the draft motions as we're proposing them are to appropriate the amount for the Community Preservation, Historic Preservation Reserve, and the General Budget Reserve.
So that too doesn't specify Historic Preservation Reserve first, to draw down from that account first, then go into the budget. So that leaves ambiguity in terms of which reserve to pull from.
It would be the Historic Resources Reserve until it's down to 0, and then from the undesignated reserve.
So as you're describing it, I agree, and I believe this committee agrees with that. It is not written in the motion to that effect.
Okay.
To draw down from one end, and further to that, I don't know if that's, if let's say other communities use that same approach, or if this is, or does this motion need to be concrete in terms of the exact amount to come from? So, like, I don't have enough history to know if other communities literally specify, X from this account, X from that, or can they say, exhaust this first and then tap it to the next bucket? But in my view, and I think I'm advocating to the committee that we are explicit that we want which reserve we want to pull from, because it has meaning to it, right? That we want to have the Historic Preservation Reserve first, and then the General Reserve. And then, of course, the motion text for general budget reserve differs from the language of the letter. So the letter says undesignated budgeted reserve. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Right, so I think we want to just be cautious about confusing town meeting about what accounts they come from.
Yeah, so these are the draft motions, we're still
Okay.
getting that, but it's we want to be clear in that I'm trying to move away. We don't want to provide is people get that general fund reserve confused with the actual town general fund, which is not what we're pulling from. We don't have access to that, so
Right.
that's why we said the undesignated, but we can work on.
Oh, what I mean is that when you have the letter of the undesignated reserve applies to CPA accounts, and then, I would use that language as opposed to general budget reserve.
Right, I think that's a holdover from, for the draft motion, we're still in. Fine. So,
Okay.
Jason, do you think if the two funds were joined by, instead of saying community preservation, historic preservation reserve and undesignated budget reserve, if it said and then undesignated budget reserve, do you think that would eliminate some of the ambiguity?
What do we say?
Well, from what, first, the community preservation and historic preservation reserve, and then the general budget reserve.
In the first instance, maybe.
Yeah.
and we can look to other communities for best practice too. on that.
We're gonna vote on this tonight, when I come back, right?
No, not for the motion, so this is just for the letter that goes to, we're just voting on the memo that goes.
So in my view, I think the memo was, I think this is good enough for the conversation, but the legal part of it is, and what I want to make sure that we're conveying is, we want to pull from the historic reserve first, then on the undesignated reserve, and that's the motion, right? The motion is what carries forward.
So just add in the first instance. And then, to the extent necessary. That'd be my recommendation.
Yeah.
People pay me $450 an hour, like that, so you get it for free.
I mean, I guess in the schedule that follows this information, as in the schedule that follows this information, you show all the funds coming out of the general reserve.
Yeah, so what I did in the budget, to go to that piece. So for the budget purposes, I did put them in the general fund, but I do have this asterisk here, and then the historic resources reserve account can be exhausted prior to using the undesignated funds, just to make that clear. So for budgeting purposes, if we're doing that, I don't want to show it negative, and then the way the formula would account for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think from
You'd
the
be
chart,
accounting the negative double.
I mean, the chart is fine, but again, I'm so focused on what is the legal part when people actually gonna move monies.
Yeah, no, I understand that, so we'll look at the motion, I was just responding to that.
Got
Yeah.
it, thanks.
There is one typo under the historic preservation list, Prospect Park Pergola is misspelled.
Yeah.
Let us.
So there's only 4,000.
Are there any other changes or clarifications anyone is looking for?
Can you scroll all the way up to the top, Chris, please? Of the whole,
Oh, I'm sorry.
because Article 14 is the historic gravestone, but it says TBD there. So
I'm sorry.
In the first
I don't
paragraph,
have
the first
it.
paragraph.
first paragraph.
CBD.
First paragraph.
Up higher.
So the first thing, say, I think 11, 12, and 13 are in support of, and then Article 14 is support of funding, so just,
Right.
any other edits?
Yes. Yes. So further on the chart itself, I think, can you just go to the header of the chart, please? So, shouldn't there be another column for FY '25? So FY '25 proposed and FY '25 budgeted, since we are in FY '25? And town meeting did approve allocations for '25?
I think it's the same thing. If you want to put budgeted, we'll put that instead of proposed. Because basically, it's an estimate of the local surcharge, which is the taxes, and an estimate what we're gonna get from the state. You don't need another column because it would have the same numbers in it.
So,
If you look at 25 up there,
yep,
you see 848.9, that's the estimate we're gonna get from property taxes.
okay.
The 178 is the estimate you're gonna get from the state. So you can leave proposed, or you can change that word to budget, that's all. I liked, when I read it, personally, I like the word proposed, because it's not a hard budget. We don't have a budget that we can hold up to the world and say, this is the budget. Those are rough numbers, they will change.
So what do you do with the line item for the buckets if you scroll now? So that's now proposed if you scroll down.
So the difference between the proposed and the budget primarily is gonna be the articles that we're proposing now, which are being accounted for in the reserve. So proposed is probably appropriate because this is different from what town meeting voted. We're asking them to vote to essentially amend this piece.
So they're not amending this, we're allocating from what they already approved.
Correct.
So if you scroll up, what I personally don't like about commingling in the same column is that if you scroll up to the section 4, it's somewhere there, like one of these sections like open space, for example, or community housing, right? We're not asking them to allocate, proposing 397, 409, 89.
It's already budgeted.
Yes, that's not negotiable, right? So that is what we walked into this year. We're in the current year. What we're proposing at town meeting is 4 articles in this total of X. So it's,
But the 397 is the accumulative number. Go up to the 102 number above it. Don't stop, you're right there. See the 102 right there? That's not a budgeted number in my mind. Because we don't know what we don't have a hard budget for receipts. Taxes, as I said, way up top, taxes and the state, those are proposed numbers that we're gonna get. So the 102 is just a 10% of that number up there from a proposal standpoint.
Are you saying we won't know the actual allocation until
Until it happens.
until the year ends?
yeah, July 1st, 2020.
Right.
Okay, so 5, right,
All
2025.
right.
We can call it.
Would Kevin do
Yeah.
the same column, have like last year's
We're
budget
passing on
and
words, that's all.
amounts, you know what I mean, like
Propose the
whatever.
budget, it's immaterial. We can leave either word, I don't care.
All right, I mean, it's not a piece of information that's gonna be approved at town meeting, it's just more from a clarity perspective, that's my point.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, again,
Is this consistent with how we've presented it before?
when we were going into an annual town meeting. But now that we're in a special, we're in the middle of an approved budget. FY '25 has been approved at the May town meeting. So we're now asking to draw from what has already been approved. And so I'm just going to repeat it and then I'll leave it alone. Commingling of this year's approved amounts with the proposed amounts in the same column creates a confusion in my mind. And if it's in my mind, it might be somebody else looking at that at town meeting. So if we leave it alone, just be prepared to answer the question if that comes up, if it comes up.
We can put budget, I mean, I don't know what's confusing about it, but We could just put budget, I don't care.
I don't think that's what town meeting's gonna be asking. I have an idea.
You're not gonna present the schedule, Chris, are you? That's just like informational that's going with the town packet.
Oh.
Right, this is information that goes with the town packet, just so, really showing kind of how we're, looking at those budget amounts. The other materials, we've developed some slides for FinCom. We would have a similar, slide deck, frankly, might be the same slide deck for, town meeting, with any adjustments that we feel need to be made, but.
Chris, could you go back and tell me how much of the general funds we're going to be pulling? I just want to, that we only have 4,000 left in the historic, right?
Yeah,
After
so,
this-
so it's, I don't want to commit to specific numbers because as we're talking about it's still based on receipts, so, there's probably another, piece that,
Are all the bills from previous
So-
projects come in yet?
no, and,
No,
and,
okay.
and so, and the other piece of this is
Yeah.
that these are budgets and projections, so part of what I did is as we get actuals, you can see I've grayed out at the top here to show that those are based on actual numbers from the general ledger, so those are actual amounts, that's what was done.
Okay.
The FY '24 budget is based on that. We're still closing out some items, so what I've done is, and this is different from what we've done in the past, is we now have this line, other fiscal year surcharge revenue received. So in FY '23, those actuals, we actually received FY '22, which was surcharge from people paying late, and then FY '24 for people paying taxes early. So those are actually received in FY '23, and we're accounting for that way. And so, as was discussed, like the proposed amount in that budget, that's going to be adjusted when we get the actuals back when the general ledger's posted, and we'll, so that'll be around fiscal year '27. And then that'll get grayed out and we'll have that
So
actual.
if you go to the section on historic preservation,
So we're projecting that we will have about 4,400 left in the account that we can,
okay, and that was
with receipts.
based on the
allocated
original
projects.
169? Or 294, how much did we start out with? 294?
Yeah. Yes,
No?
Yeah.
Huh?
yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And then you spent, in the second to the last column, you spent what's in blue. We've committed what's in blue.
Okay,
And then in '25, we've committed
Right.
additional funds. See, those are committed. We haven't necessarily spent that
spent it,
exact
but-
amount.
correct, okay.
So I guess all the bills are not in.
And we're projecting that this fund will have
4,000.
4,000
170,000
uncommitted funds.
uncommitted funds. Just so I know what to report, that's what we may have to work with, without
Right,
having to
and
go
it-
into the general fund.
Well, and so again, so this 4,000 is not accounting for, if town meeting votes on all the projects for November, we'll have zero in that
Right,
account.
correct, right, yeah, I discounted the 4, I figured that's
Yep.
out of there, okay. Thanks.
There were two other small typos up towards the top under revenue.
You're doing a good job spending money.
I know.
I see.
Seems like, you know.
Penalties,
Never had a problem.
I think it-
Got that one.
not that one, but the other one, that, and then you folks received, if you got them.
I want to start baking some.
What else, folks? What other comments or elaborations, explanations, or anything else you'd like to see for this, the memo to go in the town meeting packet? Anything else? So we do need to take a vote on this memo going to town meeting members. Is there a motion to approve this with the changes that you've spoken of? And
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving this memo? Steve?
Aye.
Aye.
Just voted fast. Any opposed? Then it does pass. Okay, moving on to our discussion items, we started talking about the presentation materials for a town meeting.
Yeah, so also in that folder, so we have that memo that will go out to town meeting members. We have, like, I added that letter from town council regarding the anti-aid, as mentioned. So we have the FinCom slides that our office developed. And as mentioned, I think that those will largely be the same that are presented at town meeting. It's really a copy and paste from town meeting member packet, but we provide a little bit of flavor photos as well. Generated kind of a locational map to try and show where in town that is. It's been some of the comments and feedback that we've heard from people at town meeting. Nothing entirely special going on here, but those are the slides that we're looking at. And then talking points, so the members of the First Congregational Church provided some talking points that they suggested that they'd like to have put in there. So I just dropped those in for the committee's reference. We'll be refining those talking points in terms of that presentation that we give. But those are some of the points that they were looking for us to incorporate. So.
Is there anything that anyone would like Chris to pay special attention to, add, question?
But just two questions. One is the memo the town meeting members also going to FinCom meeting? I'm thinking about the chart in terms of like finance committee. Are they going to have a chart to know where the balance of the accounts? I would be surprised if they didn't ask financial questions.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah,
So
we can send that memo to them. I think that'll be good information for them ahead of the meeting.
And then two, procedurally, who's covering Thursday?
Pardon me?
Who's covering Thursday?
It may be me, unless I'm down to any volunteers.
Covering for what?
Thank you.
So we need someone to present to FinCom the slide deck that we have prepared, and just discuss the projects in brief detail. Members of First Congregational Church will be there, and Kevin Esposito will be there to answer project-related questions. It's really kind of to tee it up and provide that information to FinCom. So.
I mean, I don't mind showing up. I plan on being the presenter. But if they had questions related to the committee, I wouldn't mind representing the
We
committee.
did do a small presentation. I had planned to go to there's a meeting in Grafton of area CPAs, and I had
Is that the
planned to
same
go to
meeting?
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the same.
And then I just was told that we need someone to present at
No,
FinCom.
I was gonna think of go to that meeting too, but I'll go to the finance committee meeting. I get no problem.
What time is the finance committee meeting?
Seven.
It's at 6.
It starts at 7.
No,
Six?
6 o'clock. Yeah.
Just Thursday? What time is the meeting?
Seven.
Oh,
Meeting in
CPC.
Grafton starts at 7.
Yeah.
This Thursday?
Finance
Yes.
committee will start at 6, yeah. This Thursday.
And I believe it's the end of their agenda.
I can't make it. If it's this Thursday.
And the irony, I have an identical twin, yet I still can't be in two places. Try as I might.
No, I can't make it. I'm sorry, I can't make it.
That's all right. You tell me what happens in Grafton later.
Do we know when it is on, where it is in the agenda for the finance committee?
I believe it's towards the end. It'll be
Oh.
the last part
Okay.
that they're
Yeah,
discussing.
sorry. I'm going to the Thursday meeting as well.
All right, well,
Grafton.
fill me in later what
Yes,
happens with
yes,
that.
Yes.
That is great, though. I'm glad that folks are interested in going and learning more there. There'll be a lot to be gained from it.
Oh, maybe Martha will be available.
Are you going?
I wanted to, but I can't. Yeah.
It's no offense, I asked him first.
Right.
That's all right, we're all busy. You want things done, you ask busy people.
More than 2 members planning to attend that
Yeah.
Thursday?
Thursday?
Yeah, well,
I'll post on the agenda.
Yeah, you got 3 now.
We got rid of it.
Is it a town hall?
Hmm.
Is it a town hall?
It's in Grafton, right?
Finance committee?
The FinCan
Oh.
committee's a town hall, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be there for planning board. If I have a conflict with UPS, I'll pop my head in.
Okay.
You're home away from home. So is there anything else in regards to the presentation for town meeting that folks would like to see added or noted? What else can you tell us, Chris?
I think that's all good for now. Yeah, those are the materials that we have, so.
Alright, the next discussion item is an update of the CPC Affordable Housing Trust Joint Working Group. Anything to share?
Yeah, so, I mean, do you wanna, I can give a brief update. So, the working group met, once again, we really dug into, the materials with some of, Attorney Madouse's preliminary comments. As we kind of work through that document, I think we have to do a little bit more, work in terms of, meeting with the coalition to discuss, some of those logistics, versus, project by project versus an overall agreement. So, we have made significant progress on that, but at this stage, I think we're still a little bit in the weeds in terms of presenting to the committee, but I'm hopeful to make some progress on that in the next month or so, and I think hopefully then be able to get something before the committee and the trust to review. So definitely coming along, but it's been a logistics kind of figuring that all out is a bit complicated, so just making sure that we want to be diligent that we're doing it the right way. So
Please let the rest of the committee know if there's anything you need from us or anything for that. And the next item is the project funding request about Arrowwood Drive. At this time, we're not going to be voting on it. We're going to hold on to it or consider it in light of May annual town meeting. But if there's information that you've thought of that you feel like you're lacking or any questions that you might have, we can ask us to share with Mr. Esposito if there's any more information you need to know about it. But to my knowledge, there have been no changes to the application at this time. Kathy?
My question is, why are they not willing to split this up into several different projects so it's a little bit more palatable? I mean, we asked them at a couple of meetings ago, and then we received a response saying, no, we want to do all of it or none of it, which means they might end up with none of it. But it just makes sense to me that this could be a phased project. And they seem very resistant to that. I don't understand why, like based on their response that they gave us last month.
right, I mean, I think the response that was given was pretty clear that the phased approach or reducing the project introduces logistics and introduces complexity to the project that has made similar projects in the past be unsuccessful. And so the recommendation is to move ahead with that proposal as it is existing. The intent is between now and May to do additional public outreach and additional public engagement around the specific design and what is being proposed to provide that touch point. But in terms of phasing it or reducing the amount, there's serious concerns based on past experience that would likely render the project not feasible.
Jason?
Yeah, so I have two concerns. One is, I think to put the same proposal as is to a public conversation, how would that conversation be structured? Do you like playgrounds? we have a playground for you, go talk to CPC because they don't want to say yes for $1 million. Which is, I think that would be pretty unfair if that's the conversation. To me, the more constructive piece of it would be is, how could this project be structured differently to cost less? As you know, Deborah pointed out in the last meeting, the playground structures themselves were $100,000. Like, do you like structures? Yes, they cost $100,000. That's pretty palatable. With the $900,000, the balance is a lot of rubber. And I know there's area, the fall area that Mr. Esposito talked about, but when one of the options that were on the table was one less structure, but the rubber was still there, well, then you're still having a large project where it's all this, you're paying for rubber as opposed to play structure. So it just seems to me that it's cheaper to go back to the design, in my mind, cheaper to go back to design and reevaluate that. So in the interim period, I am looking at other projects and other CPA communities like Acton, Gardner, the Gardner playground as an example. It actually is all rubber surface with multiple structures, and that was roughly 110 in ARPA funds and 110 from CPA money. So if they can pull that off for 220, I mean, just the scope, the sizing, it doesn't smell right to me. It smells like something is different there, and perhaps, you know, I don't know, maybe we need a different design company to propose what could be done in that space. Because ultimately, my concern still remains. I know that there's, the comment was made at the last meeting, oh, well, this is a request for this particular playground. But what are they asking for that's different from any other playground? 3 structures. What playground doesn't have 3 structures? This is gonna be the cookie cutter for the next ones. So if you let one go at this price tag, I think it's just gonna be binding the committee up for the next proposal being the same, similar story. I don't think it's a good move.
So, I mean, this project from the beginning has been pulled out from the full playground assessment. It has been shown to be a special project from day one. The committee reviewed this separately and pulled it out and highlighted it for the public input and the public engagement. So I think that this is a unique situation from the other playground assessments, and so I think there's an argument to be made there in terms of a cookie cutter process, that this is unique and special. It has community involvement directly with it, sponsoring the project. In terms of the other, you know, projects, I'm happy to review those. We're just discussing them now. I haven't had a chance to review them and see what, perhaps there's a proposal that they gave that was a similar amount. And as we talked about, the bid may come in less, but we're trying to budget with the design that we have. I'm confident in the design that staff and the consultant developed in terms of what they've provided, in terms of the cost estimates for that. What was done in other communities was done in other communities. And, the kind of economic conditions that we're working in now may have shifted. So I'm happy to kind of unpack some of that information between now and May. I think in terms of the public engagement, we're looking at having this discussion in a more, public setting. But in addition to that, we've kind of discussed about looking at other funding opportunities as well, looking at grants and other things to reduce that cost. So again, we remain confident in this project. We understand the concerns around the sticker price. But I think rather than trying to reduce the project or diminish the project in any way, we want to look at a way to make that more palatable between now and May, at the amount and at the design as it's proposed, because that meets the operational goals of the town in terms of their recreation, and meets the need for the community as it's been designed, as it's been developed, so. I mean, I feel a little bit uncomfortable trying to relitigate this without the, appropriate people in the room either, but.
Perhaps you could take the questions and concerns back to them and just, these are still things that are weighing on our minds when we think about this project.
I definitely will.
So let's say that again, I didn't get all that. If we have questions, we should just like forward them to him?
Yep, email me, I'll be happy to forward them to the necessary.
'Cause I do have a bunch of questions, again, without going into a whole dissertation. Okay, in my mind, aside from the cost of the playground, one of them is the handicap issue, meaning, well, it's two-part. Right now, it's a walk-up playground. And I'm gonna take a guess, in Arrowwood, there might only be 30 or 40 kids available. So do we wanna spend $1 million for 30 or 40 kids? If it becomes a true playground, spending that kind of money, like Dean Park, where's the parking gonna be? You'd have to build some parking, so is the town willing to put a parking lot in, or street parking, lined street parking, and then you're gonna do curb cuts for handicapped people being able to get to the park from the road. You're gonna have to do them anyway, even if they were to walk from Arrowwood to get there. And I don't think that's allowed under our charter. So somewhere, there's gonna have to be additional costs coming in from the town. We're gonna need handicap access to the playground. So, that's just some of the questions I got. But I really think, without parking, then you're basically saying, we don't want the rest of the town to show up at this playground. That's my impression.
So good points.
And there's no
Appreciate
sidewalks
you
off of
conveying.
Lake Street.
I'm sorry?
There's no sidewalks off of Lake Street or off of Grove Street for people other than in Arrowwood to access it.
I don't actually know how many playgrounds in town have parking. Right? I would say probably the minority. Right.
But we're not spending $1 million
No,
to fix it.
it's going to happen at every playground, right? Parking, right?
Because they're considered local right now.
Yeah.
So, in my mind, the question becomes, do I want to spend $1 million to accommodate 30 kids, 40 kids at most, maybe?
I understand your point. I understand your
I've
point.
never seen anybody use it all the time that I've driven by it, but that may
Where,
speak to the
at
condition.
Arrowwood?
That may speak to the condition of the,
Yes.
Playgrounds, yeah.
That was,
It's pretty
yes,
bad.
Yeah.
We're-
I've seen people that
There's
have
two pieces of
right,
equipment in an empty field,
Yeah.
yeah.
Out to Irita Road, I've seen kids there too, but it's really a sandbox at this point,
That's another pathetic one, yeah.
And that's the problem, right? They haven't been funded for years.
Yeah.
And so they become pathetic. And now there's a funding source that doesn't like the price tag. And granted, it's what's been proposed,
I
right?
don't see a lot of activity,
Yeah.
but there is, again, I've driven by, there's 1 or 2 people there.
One comment?
Yes.
I drove by the Grafton playground that she mentioned, that Jenna McCann mentioned, and I was struck by a couple of things. It really has a relatively small footprint, but there's a lot of stuff in it. It's got a fence, and there are no trees with it, that I recall, within the barrier. There are a couple of big pines on the outside, but that is not inside the playground proper. So, there's essentially no landscaping there. And like I said, smaller footprint, a lot of stuff in there. There's a parking area adjacent, which is convenient. So those are features that, we want to consider, how that would play out in our terms.
Yeah, I've reviewed the Grafton project pretty extensively. I've reached out to Grafton Town Manager's office and other contacts there and discussed the project with them and how that project was developed. And I know that Kevin Esposito's aware of it, we've discussed it at length, and that example is just not conducive to the project as we see it in the Arrowwood project. And they sought exemptions from ADA accessibility to allow mulch, whereas we're providing this, the rubber, which is the, primary driver of the cost, out of that idea to invest in the accessibility, which we see as not just for children, but for elderly using space, with grandkids, things like that. We see that investment as important to the community to do this right, to reduce the maintenance in terms that replacing mulch does, to drive that accessibility to a high extent. And we're looking to do that first and foremost, rather than building upon a project over time in terms of accessibility. We want to invest right the first time and have it done. Different models work for different parks and projects. In this case, the Grafton example, I think, is apples and oranges.
I think a good point is made about it would be a tremendous playground and fully accessible, except getting there with no parking lot, with no sidewalks. Do we helicopter them in, or how do the people who require the accessibility get there?
Well,
It's a
the
good
curb
question.
cuts, yeah.
Kathy?
Thank you for that. That's exactly the kind of questions I've been asking. Why? Explain to us why Grafton won't work here and what's the difference and why the money. That I've been trying to get that answer for months. So those types of things, like what else? Is it just the mulch versus the rubber, or if there's other things? I think it would be really helpful for us to hear that. So thank you for that response.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to, degrade the Grafton project, because
No.
it is a great park, and that model fit for what they were trying to achieve there. I think that's where our operational goals are separate in respect to this park. In terms of like the parking, I think that's something that's outside of CPC. We'll have to evaluate if that becomes a need. I hope that we get that usability here. But I think that's something that we would have to look at, an outside process. Obviously, CPC can't fund, parking at that location. And we don't know if there's a need for that yet. It's something that we would evaluate. In terms of the landscaping, I think our all-in landscaping, I want to say it came out to like 70,000. It's really a small piece of the project. So I don't think it would move the needle in terms of cost if we did one way or the other on the landscaping. But that's why I think it's important to have that kind of public process to engage the community, to see, make sure that our operational goals and our view and perspective of what this park should be aligns with, the community and the neighborhood as a whole, and to drive those points, which, we're, looking into. And then on the other side, look at, other funding mechanisms to reduce the sticker price to CPC. And I think those two things will generate, hopefully, a successful project for Matt.
Would the community would the community engagement be specifically for that project, Arrowwood, or would it include the assessment that was done and the overall picture of the park situation in town?
It would just be for
Just-
Arrowwood, yeah.
Yeah, there was already a public engagement for the entire assessment review that happened.
After it was reviewed?
Yep, after it
Oh,
was done,
I
yep.
didn't realize that.
Yep.
Bottom line is there's still lots of questions, concerns, and we appreciate you bringing those trying to answer them as best you can and bringing them to Mr. Esposito. And we'll continue to figure out how it works for the CPC and how it works for this community or not. Are there any other thoughts on the Arrowwood project that need to be addressed tonight? We move on to next steps. Our next meeting is December. Crazy to think. And at that time, look at our 2025 dates. We can look, make sure we schedule our public hearing in the spring, because that will come very quickly. If it's already November, then April will be here before we know it. What else do we have that we must be thinking about today? Dates to remember, of course, our Thursday is the Finance Committee presentation about these. November 18th is the special town meeting at which these 4 articles will be considered. What else did that, Chris? Anything else for tonight?
Not for tonight, I guess they're just kind of in the lead up to December, and I don't know if I'll have it prepared for December, but I do want to circle back. I know we've been threatening a presentation on our online application. Just trying to get through some of the bigger ticket items right now for our department, and then digging into that in earnest. So hopefully around December, January, we'll have that presentation to the committee. And then the other item around that time frame is we're going to be looking at doing a full website refresh. So I'll kind of cue the committee into that, but the basis of that is looking at shifting to having specific project pages for each of the project, so that you can kind of go in and see from the start to finish kind of everything that goes through, and provide that kind of, place for photos for everyone to kind of look at. So trying to kind of update and improve the CPC webpage on the town website, but more to come on that.
Casey, that's okay?
Yes, so now that we're closing down the November meeting, looks like that we have, 3 more meetings before we've been talking about the annual. And so eligibility, application process, do we have any projects that seem to be in the queue? Or if we're running dry on project proposals, maybe this is an opportunity to do some social media on CPA, get ready, submit your eligibility requests now, or not sure where to start, reach out to planning, or talk to a member of CPC. So just getting the mill ready for the next cycle.
Yeah, and I think the committee had discussed having some outreach, not just social media, but looking at some advertising and things like that, to provide some publicity. So I'll work on a proposal for that.
Thank you.
May I ask, Kathy, do you have anything in the housing arena for us?
We meet tomorrow. This meeting's always seems like, not tomorrow, I'm sorry, a week from tomorrow. We did, at Elizabeth Street, we did meet with the sewer department just to make sure that we'd be able to connect in. I can't remember if I reported on this last time, so if I already said it, stop me. But we did find out that we can connect into town sewer. We also found out that there is a pipe that runs right to our property, so we need to figure out where that is. So working on that, they go back to Jarvis for the survey, and then Grenier to see if they have to redesign any of the project, the feasibility project that he sent out with the however many homes, 24 homes on there. So we're in the process of that. We've also found out that there's some state funds available. So we have an application that we're in the process of submitting to see if we can get some state funds to match or to work with the money that we may be able to get from CPC. So we're working on those, and we'll report on those at our next meeting, which is a week from tomorrow, and then hopefully have some sort of update. But we were pleased to see that we, sewer's the big problem. That would have been a huge roadblock, so we're past that.
Is there anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That concludes our November 4th meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you all.